Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the US presidential election, of course, as it draws nearer, what the implications are globally. Of course, the race we see drawing neck to neck as far as both Harris and Trump, and the future of the US-Pakistan relations also, and globally what this means for the world. Also on the domestic front, what do people expect, where we are in terms of the presidential elections in the US? We'll be talking about all of that today. I have with me Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar, who's an international relations expert. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Shazia Malik, who is an international affairs expert and of course a journalist. Thank you for joining us today. And we also have Dr. Adnan Sarwar, who is a foreign affairs expert. Thank you for being with us today. Dr. Waqas, as far as the US presidential elections are concerned, of course, what the effect will be for Pakistan is a different, we'll go there, but overall, in terms of global implications of these elections, how do you see this?
Thank you, first of all, for having me on your show. The very idea of this global implication when it comes to US elections, of course, that is a massive global implication because of the very nature of American democracy, its military might, its economic strength, and many other factors. That's very much inevitable. Given the nature of overall the relationships and the politics within US and its interconnected relationship with the other nations, see, one of the core strength of America's democracy, and particularly when we see the Democrats and their governments, has been building alliances and cooperations and these maybe bilateral, maybe multilateral arrangements that they have been doing there. I guess this has been their core strength that they have been building. If you see from last 4 or 5 years and the previous governments as well, the entire world, they have been trying to build the alliances based on these certain values of their own government and the democracy. If you see the Indo-Pacific region or all these, there have been from last 5 years, there has been a greater focus and attention on this. Of course, China and US rivalry, there's a greater consensus within US about the Chinese rise of economy and all that.
Of course, the foreign policy of the US is a different ball game altogether. And whether it will have significant changes or not, that of course remains true for most countries, whatever the US policy is, regardless of who wins this race.
Yeah, very true, because I guess this economy, foreign policy, all these things are intertwined. If you see from the past few years, there has been a considerable, implications. The US government has been building alliances. Let's suppose if you see the AUKUS is one. If you see the other forums like they've been building a lot of forums with Japan and other South in ASEAN. If you see that they've been participating in very regularly.
Change? But let me take
so why I'm saying that, just to conclude, why I'm saying that, it all depends upon who wins, because the perspective of these alliances and collaboration, if there is a Republican government, particularly under the Trump administration, he has a very different and I must say a complex view of these partnerships, because he believes in more politics of isolation, I must say, not building or more, because he constantly and has been saying that to make America great again, or maybe focusing more internally towards America's internal politics.
Let's talk about this. On that note, let me go to Shazia Malik. Shazia, can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
Shazia, we're talking about the implications of the US presidential elections and whether for Harris and Trump, it's going to be significantly different in the sense, I think Dr. Waqas was just saying, that building alliances and their take towards foreign policy, is it going to be, in your opinion, significantly different?
Absolutely, because both of them, they are standing on two different poles. As far as the European Union is concerned, and NATO and India, of course, and the war that is going on in Ukraine and the implications that the Gaza war had. These are the things which have created mixed, sentiments in US. So for Canada and the NATO and EU, to, if Kamala Harris comes, so altogether they are going to sing along with India, Aaye ho meri zindagi mein tum bahar ban ke. Otherwise, if Mr. Trump comes, all these organizations are going to face a lot of problems. So the simple fact that Trump has said many times that if he was at helm, he would have talked to Putin because he's very close to him. He would not have let the Ukraine war on, and then Bibi, he calls Netanyahu Bibi, so that even the Middle East war wouldn't have gone ahead. And then he says that he's going to, he's not really very fond of NATO, so he always said that he wants to cut the funds. So the whole world is definitely very, apprehensive about who is going to win. However, if we see the all the indications that you have seen in the last few days, the tone of the administration over there, what Pentagon has been saying, if you have been listening to Robert Kennedy, for example, or if you have been hearing to Michael Flynn and all those, they have not really spoken very highly about Mr. Trump. And on the other side, you see Mr. Obama, and today in Texas, Beyonce is going to be with Harris. So the whole narrative that they have created is that they are very, very ready, number one, to have a female president. Number two, they want her to be there to continue the American policies that are going on. Even yesterday, Mr. Biden announced a 50 billion US dollars loan that they will be getting from, all the stocks or all the assets of the Russian, government, and they want to funnel that all towards Ukraine. So as soon as Mr. Trump comes in, all of this is going to stop. So on one side, the one part of the world is really rooting for Mr. Trump, like, for example, the American Muslims, the Arabs, who are very, very, critical of the Biden administration for the way they have, treated this Gaza war and, of course, other things. On the other side, a lot of people, and especially the Harris campaign, because we are sitting here in North America, so we follow all of this. The Harris campaign has been constantly being critical, saying that Mr. Trump is not the right person. Even Obama, he said that he talks for 2.5 hours and he just says salads, means he's not really making any sense, Mr. Trump. So the whole focus is to perhaps, show Mr. Trump in a bad light. But again, it all depends on the swing states. It all depends on the electoral college. It all depends on the
Shazia, please
administration
stay with
there.
me. Please stay with me. I'll come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Adnan Sarwar. Ji, Dr. Adnan, can you hear me? Dr. Adnan?
Yes, I can hear you.
Dr. Adnan, I don't know if you heard Dr. Shazia Malik or not. Do you think, as far as support is concerned on the domestic front, we, of course, as far as the situation stands, it seems to be neck to neck. But do you think that, it's angling in Harris' favor? According to Shazia, she's saying that it looks like America, the US as a whole, is ready for a woman president and, rooting for that.
Yes, right. Actually, I have certainly heard Shazia. Actually, she's right. And in fact, in this regard, some of the New York Times journalists also have been predicting, Robert, but in particular, that why it is so that it is still 50-50. I mean, he is of the view, a columnist in the New York Times, that Kamala Harris should have been some points ahead by now. In fact, this was what was the rating at about June of this year. And he is a little surprised at why the same percentage is still there. But anyway, I think Shazia Sahaba is right, that Americans overall have made their move to elect this time. After all, though Ms. Clinton failed, she also was a very, very strong candidate, although. But this time, it is believed that probably Kamala Harris, being a non-white also, and Americans always want to set a trend like they had done it in case of Mr. Obama. Now, but the point is that I would rather say this, that Donald Trump's uncertainty, unpredictability in the United States, okay, some die-hard Republicans are mad after him, and particularly youth, but the serious people, they are worried. The military establishment, they are worried. The deep state, more than that, they are critically worried. And you know, the recent book by Bob Woodward, who is one of the top journalists in the US or in the world, in fact, who has an approach to military establishment, deep state in the United States, has written that Mike Willey, the former chairman, Joint Chief of Staff under the Trump administration, has said that Mr. Trump is very, very strict in his views, and he is almost fascist to the core, particularly towards very key issues internationally as well as towards establishment. So these matters, I think, are going to be very crucial. And then you see, Europeans also are a little worried that if he stops the U.S. assistance, which till now was out of $133 billion to Ukraine in this war of theirs with Russia, 90 billion was from the U.S. So it is said that if Trump reduces that amount, then it would all come on the Europeans, though they self also should be increasing that. So I would say that in this regard, though this immigrants issue is very popular with Trump, and many people in the United States are expecting that if he shunts them out, the jobs vacancies for the U.S.
The two conflicts that Shazia mentioned, as far as Ukraine war is concerned, as far as the Palestine war is concerned, do you see a significant change with regard to this? Because Shazia said that as far as Trump is concerned, and we know that he's made statements like the fact that perhaps he would have been able to prevail, towards to end these conflicts. Do you think that is just hyperbole? Do you think that that shows that perhaps there is some pull there?
Well, I don't think so. In fact, this is something which he's saying for the sake of being looked as a peace person. His overall image that he conveys to the world is like that. But I don't think so. You see, had Hamas attacked Israel, and then Trump would have been so influential on a country as crazy and criminal as Israel to not have started the war against Hamas, in fact, against all the Palestinians in Gaza, including the children and women, old and sick, and now in Lebanon. And so I don't think so that he would have been able to stop it. Now, Russia is also that thing. Well, one thing is there that on Russian front, he would have been a little more successful because he could have not encouraged NATO to be talking to Ukraine about the membership of Ukraine at that time. So that would not have annoyed Russian Federation so much, you see. So there you see, I am a little, I would not say that.
Dr. Adnan, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your very valuable input. I'm going to go to, we have with us Jauhar Saleem, who's former Foreign Secretary and President IRS. Thank you for being with us. Jauhar sir, we're talking about, of course, the implications of the US elections and the fact that, what does it look like? In your opinion, do you think that, first of all, it seems like, overall, the opinion here seems to be that the US is ready for a woman president at this time. Would you agree with that?
I think that right now the problem is not that.
Okay.
When Hillary was even at that point, the US was probably right for that.
Okay.
But then Trump sprung a big surprise because of the peculiar dynamics of the US presidential elections.
Okay.
Because we have to remember that Hillary got million more votes than Trump in terms of popular votes. But they have this electors system, you know, like whereby it's just the swing states and what they call the battlegrounds. It's at the end of the day, it's just 6, 7 states. That is where the election is fought, and that is where it's decided. And you know, and some of those states flipped by very like just some tens of thousands of votes, and that was it. In the next elections, when President Biden was elected, again what happened was that Biden got 7 million more votes than Trump. But still, the election was decided only by 50,000 votes in the swing states. So that is the unique dynamic of the US presidential election. In this election as well, we've seen that Kamala has been sort of, you know, like in the opinion polls at least, she's been doing better than Trump. And even now she has a slight, although that lead has disappeared in the recent weeks. But what we see is in the like RCP, if we talk about RCP or the site F538, these are the major sites which take all the polls into account and come up with averages. And there, Kamala is still leading. But on the other hand, when you look at the swing states map, the battlegrounds, so to speak, these are like 7 states. These are states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina. These are the states where the elections actually decide. Because see, in the US, they are the deep red states and they're the deep blue states. These are, you know, nothing changes there. California will always vote Democrat, and New York would always vote Democrat, and Texas would always vote Republican. It's the swing states which swing a bit, and that's where the elections are decided. So first of all, they're terming it as the closest elections in US history in many ways. Although right now I believe that Trump has a major edge, you know, where I see the election.
But the polls do show that, you know, Harris is doing better, right?
Yeah, but that's just a popular vote. In terms of the electors, I think that right now Trump is, and I've seen those sort of, you know, some of the projections. He's over, like they are showing 322 electors and 230 or something for Kamala. So the difference is growing actually there. Now in terms of policies, what do they represent? First of all, we have to remember that domestically, traditionally Republicans mean less government, sort of, you know, less taxes, but less social security as well, less on healthcare as well. On the other hand, Democrats stand for what? They want more equitable taxation. They want to spend more on education, more government in a way, because the more government intervention in the economy, more government intervention in the sort of, you know, like in some of these areas like education and healthcare. Like for instance, Biden tried waiving off the student loans. You know, these are like, this is a big deal in the US. And Obama tried for Obamacare, you know, this whole sort of, you know, like, because the US does not have that type of a health care system as some European countries have. That is within the US. Then, okay, what do they represent? In the US, Trump represents the non-college graduate whites. He represents the you know, what some people call the rednecks, you know, the more sort of, you know, like the Midwest in particular, you know, like the white men in general. Democrats, they're more like, you know, it's a more you know, colored coalition, you know, the white women, college graduates, whites, the blacks. Latino vote has split now. Latino vote has now tilted towards the you know, the Republicans, and that has changed the American political landscape. But then if you talk about women, more towards the Democrats, especially for Kamala because she's a woman. And then the Arab Americans, the Muslim Americans, you know, again the South Asians are more sort of Democrat and with the more Democrat inclination. That is what they represent. Now in the international arena, what do they represent? On Israel, there's a bipartisan support, both the parties. But Trump would probably be even closer to you know, he's closer to Netanyahu.
But he says that that's what he says, right? That he is closer, so perhaps he could have mediated better, or you know, that's what he's arguing.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it, because, and again we know he's closer to Putin as well, and he has claimed that he will finish the, you know, he will sort of, you know, negotiate, you know, the end of war in Ukraine in one day. That, you know, okay, that's a very big claim.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt that he's closer to Putin, and that helps sometimes. Again, he's closer to Netanyahu, that might help as well. But the fact is that he was the architect of the Abraham Accords, you know, These are the accords whereby Israel was being recognized and sort of diplomatic relations were being established by many Arab countries, including Jordan, for example, Bahrain, you know, and they were trying for the Saudis as well. UAE, of course, was there. So once he come to power, and he has this son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who's a Jewish, and he's very close to the sort of, you know, Jewish leadership in Israel. So again, we might see a revival of that process in some ways. Then again, in terms of Euro-Atlantic relations, what do they represent? When Trump is in power, he doesn't really care about that. He doesn't really care much about NATO. So that's a big thing, you know, because then that has a profound implications for the global sort of, you know, chessboard. Democrats are very sort of, you know, very cognizant, and they're very sort of, you know, like very much for the Euro-Atlantic, for maintaining and preserving and enhancing the Euro-Atlantic partnership that is between the EU and the US. They're core allies. Trump is also a little mercurial. So he brings a lot of sort of, you know, like, he brings a lot of kind of this element of unpredictability in democracy, you know, like. And
I want to talk more about that. Let me include, you know, Dr. Waqas also. Dr. Waqas, of course, there are two questions. One, how it affects the world, and you spoke about that earlier also, and how it affects us as far as the US election is concerned. Do you think it will significantly affect, one, our relationship with the US, or, you know, our relationship with other countries? You know, depends on who is going to win this election at all.
Yeah, see, it all depends. I mean, when we talk about this Kamala Harris and then the Donald Trump, I mean, of course, there are a lot of divergences when it comes to politics, particularly if this region, when we were talking about this Indo-Pacific, let's suppose right now, I mean, he's talking about that he'll impose sort of 10 to 20% tariff on all the goods imported to US, one. And of course, it will impact supply chains, it will impact the partners and other as well. And then saying about that, he'll impose this around 40 to 60% taxes and tariffs on the Chinese imports. Talking about, of course, a lot of economy and economic arrangements, and particularly over the period of time, 4 or 5 years, US has built and in fact strengthened these ASEAN states' relationship with them, particularly if you see the Korean and Japanese coming closer together in Vietnam, and also building a lot of alliances with Australia, you have seen that, and other countries as well. Now, of course, when it comes to Trump, I mean, he has been saying that I'm the president of the United States, not the president of the globe. He has his own isolation and sort of very policies towards focused on domestic audiences more. I guess definitely it will impact, because at some time you never know, he could trade off these security arrangements with China, particularly in terms of trade concessions and other. There is also fear, because how would it impact the partners and alliances that have been the strength of the US? That's a bigger question, because countries like Japan, for that matter, Korea for that matter, Philippines, I mean, there's been a great crisis over there, or impending crisis when it comes to the China and their neighboring countries as well. So US was giving a lot of support to them, and of course this can change the dynamics as well. On the other side, I mean, see, one more important thing. I mean, what is his campaign's most, I guess, one of the big argument out of the 20 core slogans is saying, the top of it is that let's make America great again. He's saying that, but he's also saying let's America make affordable again. Constantly targeting the economic crisis. It's not there. In 2022, I guess the inflation was down from, I guess it was down, very much down from, since last 40 years, they haven't seen that sort of reduction in inflation. But still, I guess the Democrats couldn't, I must say, couldn't exploit that thing, or couldn't, you know, take benefit of that thing. And that's one problem also. He's also talking about a lot of tariffs and all these things. I mean, we do believe that these 93 electoral college votes in these 7 swing states would matter at the end of the day. But it's difficult to say, because Kamala Harris will try to continue and has sort of incremental approach towards policies, towards their partners, towards their alliances, trying to build that, and trying more talking about competition, not maybe confrontation. But when it comes to Trump, of course, it has a severe and serious implications. I mean, talking about, let's suppose, as Jauhar Sahib mentioned about, you know, dealing with that Ukraine crisis in 24 hours, or I know Zelensky, I know the Putin, and I can do that in 24 hours. Or maybe in other crises, had I been there, the crisis with Israel and Palestine couldn't happen, and all these things. I guess this is too oversimplification. And that has been the problem. Now the question is that what is the leverage to the US president? Largely they talk about the foreign policy. Of course they have the divided house when it comes to the Congress and all that. I personally see that it would be very difficult right now for US, particularly those who are thinking about policies and framing all these things, to sustain their core of building alliances and having relationships and continue that 4, 10, 5 years investment of the Democrats. This would be a great challenge. And for us region, I mean, sadly their focus has been towards more or neighboring country, particularly India.
But doesn't that, okay, I want to come to that, but you know the sad reality is that it doesn't always happen regardless of who's at the helm of affairs in the US. To an extent, they seem to angle towards our neighboring country more than they do here. That's just not just exclusive to Trump, right?
I guess it depends. To me, I mean, the China factor, of course, that's a greater consensus in US politics, particularly both in Republicans and Democrats, that China is a rising power and that they have to counter it. Now, how to counter that depends upon their strategies. But I guess for India, I guess that's the bigger space where they think India as a partner in the region that can counter the Chinese influence in that sense. But I guess Pakistan should also see that how we can benefit from our own potential. That's building a long-term sustainable relationship with these governments.
Let me go to Shazia and then I'll come back to you. Shazia, you know, we spoke about, of course, you know, the fact that it's going to be Harris and as a woman. But what about Trump's, you know, conviction? And the US being, do you think that has any implications on his voter base? Has it affected it in any way?
No. One thing, first of all, I would like to clarify. The gentleman before me, he said that had Trump been there, this war still would have gone ahead with in Gaza. I absolutely don't think so. Yes, October 7 happened, but then what is the key there? The key there was Abraham Accords, right? And for the longest time, Israel has been saying that they want to befriend with the rest of the Muslim countries, especially Saudi Arabia. So Trump would actually have used that if you want friendship with Saudi Arabia and if you want him to bring in the fold of Abraham Accords, you cannot escalate the war. So this one point I wanted to clarify. The second thing, what implications you were again saying that Trump campaign is talking about or is going to have in the broader sense. I just said in the first instance when you talked to me that swing states are definitely going to play a part, but we also have to see inside US what is going on. Yes, definitely in the past we have seen that people got the popular vote, but still they could not really, win. Here, the things are that the dynamics inside are changing. Swing states, specifically, if we talk, for example, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, it was here that specifically last time Mr. Biden was leading, and definitely, of course, the Electoral College as well. This time, at that time, the Muslim vote over there, what were they routing for? They were asking for economy and healthcare and social justice. Now, specifically in these states, the Muslim vote, which is somewhere between 65% or so, according to the data that I had in 2020, they are asking specifically the whoever is coming as the next president. But I personally think that Harris will win, that Gaza war must stop. So a lot of dynamics since then have changed. Again, like you might have heard all that rhetoric that is going on against, Mr. Trump. I personally believe it's being done specifically to put Harris in a good, light. For example, Mark Esper, the former defense secretary, he calls him fascist. Then again, the White House chief of staff, John Kelly, comes in and says something like that. Then Joint Chiefs of Staff of Trump's time, Mr. General Mark Milley comes and says that. If you have heard, there also is an undertone there. And those undertones are being talked about if at all. Allegedly, the American military is telling the voters, not to vote for Mr. Trump, which of course the American military has rubbished those reports, but still all those things are cropping up. So actually there is now a movement, which is an undercurrent, that Harris should come to continue the policies of the American government that is going on. However, like again, I said earlier, if Mr. Trump comes in, he's going to cut all of this because his policy again is America first. He wants all that money to stay inside US. He does not want wars in the world.
So the Muslim
he wants
vote,
to stop that.
Shazia, so the Muslim vote is, you're saying, angling clearly towards Trump.
She can, specifically those 3 states. Yeah, it's with Mr. Trump. But like I'm repeating myself too many times, the administration at the moment over there and the Pentagon, all these things that I have just mentioned, the Pentagon, a tone is that Harris should, come over so that she continues the Biden administration.
So you're saying that the administration versus the people's vote, and there's a difference there, right? Clearly, that's what you're saying. Let me go to Jauhar Saleem on this. Joseph, would you agree with this? I mean, she's saying that, it's what the administration wants and what the people at this time, the situation on ground seems to be.
I would agree to the extent that, officials in Pentagon and many other organs of the government, they would probably prefer Kamala.
Okay.
They think Trump is too unpredictable. And the US establishment, so to speak, generally they're a little wary of Trump. But in America, we have to remember that, again, there's a different system than ours. They have a system called the spoil system, whereby when a new administration comes to power, all the top bureaucrats also change, So it's not like they just bring in new people, like we don't have that in Pakistan or the UK or many European countries. It's a unique system again. Thousands of those people are put on top bureaucratic positions. So even that changes. But I don't, I think I would be very surprised if Trump loses this election, but I'd be very surprised from here on, because the dynamics of, first of all, the US officials or the administration, whatever they might want, they cannot really influence the result of the election. That is one thing. The second thing is that it's basically the Arab votes that has been indicated. The Arab Americans in these states, in Michigan, they are there. Perhaps in Pennsylvania as well, perhaps a bit in Georgia, but that's just 2-3% of the total vote. That wouldn't really influence the elections. The Muslim vote is too small there, and the Muslim vote right now, they probably might not even vote, because what are they going to vote for? They are very disappointed with the Democrats, because of their policy on Gaza, the Israel policy, because of the fact that they were not able to, stop the war. To affect the ceasefire.
We'll be taking a short break, after which we'll come back. Welcome back. Jauhar Sahib, I think you were earlier saying in terms of our relationship with the US, how do you see it changing, if one, let's see, for example, if Trump wins?
Yeah, what happens is what we saw the last time as well. First of all, it brings a bit of an unpredictability to the relations. Although I think that the US foreign policy in Pakistan is now bipartisan, because both these parties have a consensus on what? On the US so-called Indo-Pacific strategy, on containment of China, on closer relations with India, and sort of allowing India to expand its sort of influence.
And you were saying that, of course, the administration, as far as, unique to the US, their bureaucratic establishment changes with whoever. So
with the spoil system, the top, thousands of top officials, they change. So a new administration does bring in, it not only brings what we call the ministers and they call the secretaries, right? But it also, they also change the top bureaucrats in all the departments. So that means that they can actually really influence the policy if they want to, or bring new kind of ideas and policies. But the problem is that in Pakistan, the two parties do not have a great deal of divergences. The policy is very consistent, which is generally, it favors India, of course. They see India as the preeminent power in the region, and they see India India's interest aligning more with the US interests. And they don't really see the Pakistan-China strategic partnership, of course, I mean, they tolerate that, but they don't see it most favorably. So I think whether Trump comes or the Democrats, Trump will, okay, both will probably accelerate their policy for containment of China, and that will create some challenges for Pakistan. On the other hand, one difference we will see is in terms of the rhetoric, because Trump, he uses very strong language, and he sort of, and sometimes he bluffs as well, so kind of, because last time what we saw, on one occasion, he's used some very strong words against Pakistan, but on another occasion, he used very strong words to praise Pakistan, so he could change from day to day literally. So that brings a lot of because he's very mercurial, and he's sort of, and he doesn't really have very sort of, he doesn't really have very sort of deep held principles or ideology of the sort, because he sees, he only thinks in terms of interest, and he sees interstate relations as something totally transactional, and he doesn't even care about the US, long-standing US allies such as the UK or the European. So what to talk about Pakistan? So I think so that would bring more uncertainty if Trump is elected, which at this point in time it seems likely, I think.
Dr. Waqas, do you agree with what Jauhar Sahi was saying? Essentially, of course, and the difference it makes to us on the domestic front at all. Do you think it's going to make a difference?
See, on the team, I mean, it's expected that he would come with a team which will be more hawkish, I mean, as compared to the Kamala, because of the issues and the standpoints he have. I mean, he has to deal with the climate change issue and saying that I will, on renewable energies, he's not supporting that, saying that fossil fuels and oil and particularly car industry and vehicle industry, he want to renew all that. So it would be challenging, I mean, to navigate these things, and then you have to, of course, you have a global leadership thing in your mind and all that. So it's quite challenging. He would come with that leadership. Of course, much more hawkish towards China as well, for that matter. On the other side, I guess more importantly, what we need to see is that Pakistan's relationship with the US or its impact. Of course, I mean, we've been saying that this relationship is also has been very transactional in nature. Maybe there was point we could have built it on strong foundations, having long-term relationship. But I could also say and would see the role of Pakistan's diaspora that should be more connected and would aspire more for to play more role in their politics. That's the area where I guess our diaspora and educated young people, and particularly those who are living there, should focus on and work on. I guess that's the area where we can, they can play a better role in shaping a better relationship between societies to societies, between US and Pakistan. One last thing on the comment regarding that Abraham Accord and others. I guess that's the problem in with such leadership like Trump, that they don't believe in larger consultations. It's more imposing others, looking things at a very surface level. I mean, whatever peace building mechanism you have to build it bit by bit. You have to involve people, you have to engage people, and you can't isolate people. You can't build these linkages and establish these broader accords without including and becoming an inclusive, have an inclusive approach. That was, I guess, bigger problem over there, because the actual parties are the parties who are affected by the conflict directly. You have to create that mechanism that is inclusive of that. It's difficult, it's time taking, but it can be sustainable. So if you are going for such deals, having no inclusive approach, not bringing the marginalized communities, particularly communities affected by conflict, in this process, it is difficult to sustain, and you have seen that.
When we've seen, the role that conflicts like Ukraine and particularly Palestine, we've seen huge rallies, and I think we've spoken about this before. To channelize that support and to be able to deliver on that front, do you think that will be a priority for Trump, for example, if he wins?
No, I guess he never believed in these things, to be honest, that he has to involve the communities and uphold the universal values of human rights and democracy and all that. I mean, on immigration, he's saying that his allies and his people from campaign saying that we'll throw out the 1 million people from the beginning, and we'll build the walls. I guess that was another slogan at that time. I don't see that's his priority, but I guess this is a bigger question to the systems of the world, that the voices of the civil societies, those are on the streets but not heard on institutionally. That's a question to the larger American democracy as well. That's a question to the larger global institutions as well, that how these voices, particularly of civil society, non-state actors, those and people, those who are believing in the values of civil liberties and human rights, how they can be brought into the institutional mechanism to make it more effective. Otherwise, there's a continuous, disappointment, and people are, sort of disappointed from these global institutions, and particularly the bigger powers. Now, particularly when it comes to these two conflicts, like Gaza and what happened over there, and also, for that matter, Ukraine and Russia as well.
Let me go to Shazia. Shazia, quickly, we don't have time, but I would like your opinion. Do you think that under the Trump administration, perhaps the US can change in unpredictable ways? Because we've spoken about how his style of governance is completely different from, for example, from the Biden administration earlier, and then Harris is likely to be. Do you think the shape of the US democracy can change significantly, or do you think that it doesn't really matter who wins the election in the long run?
One good thing about the American system is that most of the time, Mr. Trump was a very different example. Most of the time, the administration tries to continue the core values. And then it is absolutely, like, for example, we think that the American president is, all powerful and he has all the power to do things, but there are, powers behind also who are which are working. And so the policies are, are talked about by the president and his caucus. But the thing is that actually what the administration is working behind, what they want to take forward, that exactly what matters. In Trump Saab's case was that Mr. Trump was, very uncertain. Like for example, few things as the administration has portrayed as well, he would say things which were not really in line with the American administration, and he would do few things and announce few things which were not in line, and that is the biggest concern of the administration, not only in US but the larger world, especially in Canada, for example, or the European Union, that he does not toe the same policy, for example, of the alliance or his own country. So definitely Mr. Trump has this thing. And that is why when we say that, Mr. Trump might have in some of the swing states some of the support, like Pennsylvania, that has 19 electoral votes, and then in Georgia, which has 16, and then in Michigan, which has 15. But then the others, like, for example, Arizona and Wisconsin and Nevada and North Carolina, Kamala Harris has an edge. This is a very close fight. And we also talked about the...
Yes. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us, Shazia Malik. Thank you for joining us. Jauhar Saleem Saab, thank you for being with us. Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar, thank you for joining us. Dr. Adnan Sarwar, thank you for being with us. Of course, at the end of the day, it seems to be a very close race, and we'll know very soon what happens with regard to the US elections and the policy overall, and what it can mean on the domestic front as the unpredictable nature of the Trump administration versus what is known as the usual style of governance we've seen from the Biden administration. Thank you so much for being with us today on Perspective.